So we're picking up from the end of the previous chapter and we're finally seeing YUJI confront Hakari. And Hakari immediately says, like, would you believe me if I said you can work for an hour a day and make 1,000,000 yen a month? And YUJI's like, it depends on what I'd have to do. And then Hakari says, well, for that info, you're gonna have to pay me 200,000 yen. And YUJI's like, I don't trust like that. And Hakari's like, you guessed it, classic con. The swindler rakes in by pretending to be rich and selling tips on how to get rich. It's pretty obvious, but there's a stupid number of stupid people out there. I'm sure tons of us have seen these guys in ads on YouTube. It's possible you may have even seen one of them before this video started. And then Hakari starts going into this monologue about the fever, which is, in my opinion, an odd choice of words here. And I know this is just one translation of what is being said here, but it is the official and we're gonna have to go off of it. But hey, what do I know? I don't know Japanese and I don't really get into translations and stuff like that, so it is what it is. But he's basically saying people get high on the fever and make mistakes. However, without it, people can't even fall in love. And he asks YUJI, like, do you know more of a direct way of dealing with the fever? And YUJI suggests gambling, and he's like, yeah, life itself is a gamble. Society tramples on guys who can't bet big and guys who don't know when to quit. Everyone gambles. What they hate is losing and going to ruin. I love the fever, and the fever is gambling, and gambling is life, and love is control. I want to control this country's fever through this fight club. So all of this is just establishing Hakari as a character and what his motivations are. And I gotta say, it's very interesting, and I did not expect Hakari to be like this, but then again, I don't really know what I expected Hakari to be anyway. I mean, I expected him to be more of like a stereotypical Bancho archetype, and I guess he technically is Bancho if you're going by like the literal translation of it. He's just different, but not in a bad way. But anyway, his main motivation here is that now that cursed spirits are public knowledge, given what happened at the end of the Shibuya arc, along with Jujutsu headquarters barely functioning, he wants to expand his current business that he has with this fight club and basically turn it into like the Jujutsu UFC or something. Because he says, like, I want to take care of all the obstacles so that I can take advantage of the coming revision of Jujutsu regulations and make them public knowledge, the existence of the fight club. So from a business aspect, that's an awesome idea, of course. And like I said, he's basically trying to make like the Jujutsu sorcery equivalent of like UFC or something like that, which is what he was already kind of doing, but it was super low key and the spectators weren't really aware of what was going on. I mean, if we go 2 chapters back when YUJI is entering the tournament, the one guy says like, hey, don't use any cursed techniques because the spectators can't see them. And that raises another question. It's like, okay, even if cursed spirits and all that stuff is public knowledge, it's not like the spectators are going to be able to see it now, even if they're told it's happening. So I'm going to do some lifting for Gege here and say maybe he hands out glasses to the whole entire audience, like the kind that Maki used to wear so that she could see cursed spirits, kind of like when you go to like a 3D movie. I mean, that would certainly makes sense, and I'm sure that's what Gege would have said in this chapter if he wanted to further explain Hakari's business plan. But then he says, like, I need a strong piece in order to do that, being YUJI. So I guess he wants to like build YUJI up to be like his big like Jujutsu UFC champion, or one of them or something. And then YUJI's about to ask Hakari something, but then his phone starts ringing and it goes to a missed call, and Hakari looks down on it and then he looks to YUJI and then he says, hey, you want a drink? And YUJI's like, sure, but no alcohol, I'm underage. Hakari's like, Gojo, he can't drink either. And then YUJI, trying his best to lie, is like, who's Gojo? Besides, it's more like I can't. And then Hakari's like, all sorcerers know who Gojo is. Why are you pretending like you don't? Then he downs his drink and he's like, are you a spy from Jujutsu High? Then he seemingly activates his curse technique on YUJI, and it's still just as confusing as it was when we got the spoilers on Wednesday, although they don't appear to be tatami mats like how they were described originally. They kind of look like doors or something, right? So I just still don't exactly understand what this is. But it's interesting how Hakari activates it, because he goes like this, almost as if he's like telekinetically controlling them maybe. And I did backtrack through the last 3 chapters to try to see if we could see these things in the room, but I couldn't find them. So maybe they are somewhere in the room, but they're just out of frame. And I say that because it could be giving us some insight into what his ability is. And I wish I could give you a better guess as to what this is, but I just don't know. Maybe it's like one of those many battle manga things where like you need to be Japanese to like understand some of this stuff, I guess. But like I said before in many previous videos, Gege said in like a Fuji TV interview that Hakari's technique has something to do with his name or relates to his name or something, and his name could translate to scales or balance or something like that. And given what we're seeing here, it's not making any more sense to me. But we'll come back to this because they actually do bring up his technique again in this chapter. So they like get into a scuffle and it winds up with Yuji getting like trapped between these two door-like things. And Hakari says, when I get a call from Kirara, it means something's up. So going back to the previous chapter, we saw Kirara attempt to make a phone call to Hakari, but it wasn't really made clear if the call was successful or not because he was also getting attacked by the divine dog. And the phone got knocked out of his hand, so we weren't sure if it went through or not, but apparently it did. So then Yuji gives Hakari a straight up Tanjiro style headbutt and says, listen to me. But then Hakari, with like this manic look on his face, says, no, because now I feel cold, showing us more of this oddball type character that Hakari is. But unfortunately, that's where this sequence is going to end, and we're not going to see them for the rest of this chapter. But now we're coming to the other side of things, and we're picking up with Megumi Panda going against Kirara, and Megumi's trying to explain to Kirara that we aren't necessarily on Jujutsu High's side. You know the current situation in Tokyo, right? There was an unprecedented Jujutsu attack. We need Hakari's cooperation. Then Kirara's like, you excluded us first. It's your own fault. And then Megumi's like, we're not with Jujutsu High. Then he asks like, what happened between you and the higher ups? And then Panda butts in and tells us what we already knew, which is that they had a fight with the conservative faction, but we didn't necessarily know it was Kirara at that time. We just knew that it was Hakari. But then Panda says, and the conservative doesn't just mean with regard to regulation. And he goes on to further explain what he means by that, but I also think there's multiple meanings to this too, because Kirara is in this panel and Panda is kind of looking at him, and conservative is in quotes. So this could mean that the higher ups do not approve of Kirara as a person, if you get what I'm getting at. But going further, Panda says they have specific ideas about what jujitsu should be like. They like conventional jujitsu that's easy to understand, like Kugisaki's curse technique. Over time, jujitsu has blended with tech, and when it starts affecting curse techniques, the conservatives start to grumble. Then Kirara says Kin's curse technique is a perfect example. Big shots have it all backwards, that's why they lost. So a few things to take away from this. First of all, Nobara is being mentioned here, so hopefully that means that she is in fact not dead, and she will eventually have a nice big comeback. And also, since her curse technique is being mentioned here, that could mean she might get an upgrade in her technique to where the conservatives no longer approve of it, you know? Hopefully. But, you know, she could be dead too. But then what Kirara says about Kin's curse technique is a perfect example, meaning that it is not as simple as it looks. And given that his whole thing is like being in control, and what he talked about writing scripts in the previous chapters, it's probably nuanced and it had multiple abilities to it maybe. Then Kirara says, but Gojo always cleans up your messes. So why do you need us? Maybe you're lying and you came here for some other purpose. And Megumi's like, Gojo got sealed. That's why we lost. And Kirara looks at him like, what? And Panda and Megumi are like, oh no, Kirara doesn't believe us. Which is understandable, because Gojo is the one above all in this series. But then Megumi says Kirara is the closest person to Hakari. If we convince Kirara, then negotiations with Hakari will go more smoothly, and he activates Rabbit Escape. So I'm assuming that this is going to be his trump card to overcoming Kirara's curse technique, which still hasn't been explained and also seems to be just as nuanced or possibly as Hakari's is. But that's pretty much it for the review today, guys. Let me know what you think about this in the comments. What do you think Hakari's curse technique is? Let me know. And if you liked the video, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.